In the wake of Watches and Wonders 2022, I've been thinking about Grand Seiko and where they're going. And I've begun to think, if you're toying with the idea of getting into Grand Seiko, I'd move pretty quickly. I suspect they're about to get a lot more expensive very, very fast. Fair warning, if you're thinking I'm going to walk through all of the Grand Seiko releases at Watches and Wonders 2022, I'm not. I'm going to briefly talk about the Kodo Constant Force Tourbillon. I might touch on some of the others, but I'm not really talking about those releases. I'm more talking about what those releases and that Kodo in particular means and where I think this signals where Grand Seiko wants to go. What got me thinking about this is I was watching a live stream, pretty sure it was on Sanjay, Engineer Wannabe's channel. There was a panel of people discussing what happened at Watches and Wonders, grading each of the companies. And Grand Seiko got mixed reviews. Most people kind of like the watches. Everyone was very excited about the Kodo high horology stuff. But there was a general feeling that it was too expensive, that Grand Seiko had left people behind, was straying outside its lane. I think Bobby Legg said something like that Grand Seiko made sense as a value proposition at $4,000 or $5,000, but at kind of Rolex prices, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, it didn't. It was too expensive. That's an interesting sort of idea. When I went back and looked at, well, what were the prices of, for example, I think it's the Evolution 9 series dive watches that Grand Seiko brought out at Watches and Wonders. They actually line up almost exactly with Rolex prices. Now, today, the cheapest Grand Seiko diver you can get is around about the same price, within a couple $100, as the cheapest no date Rolex sub, and the most expensive is actually not that far off the same price as a deep sea. So some correlation between Rolex and Grand Seiko is kind of natural. I can see why people are drawing that comparison. I started thinking, why wouldn't Grand Seiko and Rolex be comparable? Why wouldn't Grand Seiko prices match Rolex prices? But then I started to think about, well, who is Rolex? Rolex is a company that makes about 1 million watches a year. They make predominantly sports watches, and they make complex watches. They make complicated watches. It's unfair to say they don't do complicated watches at all. But their real bread and butter is super solid, really high tech, straightforward three-handers, occasional GMTs, stretching to a chronograph. And then on top of that, it's really clever ways of achieving those sorts of complications. So they don't go for super high complications, but what you get are really clever and innovative ways of doing an annual calendar, of doing a world timer, of doing a yacht timer kind of function. That's Rolex's swim lane. Look at Grand Seiko and you're looking at a company of 50,000 watches a year, it's estimated. Not sports, predominantly dress tool watches. Their sports line is a little bit stunted and not really their core. And until recently, they'd kind of matched Rolex. I would have said that their movement technology, they have multiple movement techs across quartz, spring drive, and mechanical. But like Rolex, was predominantly around really clever and very high-tech ways of achieving those relatively straightforward complications, GMTs, annual calendars, chronographs, etc. With the Kodo, that changed a little bit. That had been drifting around as a concept watch, but now, unlike anything Rolex has done for literally decades, they've come out with a highest of high, grandest of grand, haute horology power moves, with the Kodo Constant Force Tourbillon, all on one axis, never seen done this way before, all wrapped up nice and neatly in a sapphire case. And most importantly, series production. Not a lot, but series production. They're making 25 of these, selling them at $350K each. So when you start thinking of it that way, 50,000 watches, mostly dress, aiming at more and more grand complications, Grand Seiko isn't sounding like a Rolex competitor at all. That's a Patek kind of bio. That's aiming at a much bigger, much grander adversary. And then when you think about who Grand Seiko is, how they sell, the numbers they sell, kind of their idea of who they are, then I don't think Rolex is a comparison at all for Grand Seiko. I don't think there's anyone in Grand Seiko headquarters saying, how do we catch Rolex? How do we be like Rolex? I don't think they care. If you look at how they're structuring their releases, their catalog, what's important to them, they look like Patek. They don't look like Rolex. Are they going to do this next year? No. Are they going to do it in 5 years? No. Could I see in 10 years' time, Watches and Wonders 2032, a couple of grand complications from Grand Seiko, each costing 6 figures, right at the high end, complications that no one has done before, in materials that no one has done before, maybe selling in 50, 60 watch batches, perhaps not even making it to market, being sold special order. That doesn't sound a million miles from impossible. In fact, I think that's what we're going to see. Hence, I don't think the prices of Grand Seiko are coming back to affordable value proposition anytime soon. In fact, I don't think they're ever coming back at all. Those prices are going one way, and they're all going to be directed towards ultimately, routinely, everything being 5 figures, high-end stuff being 6 figures. So, as I said earlier, if you're thinking of, I might want to get in on Grand Seiko soon, I wouldn't wait. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. If you've got thoughts on this, I'd love to know. Stick them in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you later. Bye.